Hi everyone, my name is Vukosi Sambo. I'm the Group Chief Information Officer at the PHA Group and also the STM Healthcare Investment. I'm one of the anchor judges for the South African AI Awards, and we're excited with already the number of nominations that we've received, and they demonstrate the great work that is happening to innovate using AI in a way that makes long-lasting impact and create value to stakeholders. From an adoption perspective, I think what is quite interesting from a South African point of view is that if you consider different dimensions, one being the business adoption itself at an organizational level and even in the public sector, you see quite a lot of excitement and this appetite to adopt AI. But what we've also seen is that given that to get AI really right in a sustainable way, it takes quite a lot of foundational elements that really make AI work, from data to security to platforms and making just the right technology choices. And what we've seen over the last few years is that most organizations are battling to demonstrate ROI from AI adoption. And what that has done is that it has made most organizations take a step back and say, we want to still do this, we want to continue, but now we want to have a very, very good focus on use cases that will deliver value for us as an entity. So that is at a business level. If you look at a public sector level, I think that's the area that has lagged the private sector. And the big challenge with that is that public sector ideally under ideal circumstances, you want them to be the one that are leading this, primarily because their responsibility is to create an environment that business can really flourish in and also be able to provide really a lead role in how we can really implement AI in a very responsible way from a regulation and policy perspective. And as a result, you're seeing the innovation that is being spearheaded by the private sector sort of like outpacing the regulation that needs to travel alongside it in parallel to ensure that we really adopt AI responsibly. Furthermore, which is also interesting at a second dimension that I want to talk about, is just the people in these respective organizations, both private and public sector. What you pick out is that there's actually high levels of adoption. I'm sure almost everyone that you know has at some point in time or is currently on a consistent basis using one of the AI tools applications, probably the famous ones like your ChatGPT, right? So what you're seeing is that even organizations that are slow in adoption, you have people within those organizations that are already starting to use this because they can see that this is improving my productivity. It's making me more efficient in being able to do my work, be it is to generate content, do research, manage workflows, and so forth. And the danger with that misalignment or mismatch is specifically that you end up with what we call shadow AI, which is use of AI by people within organizations in a way that is not sanctioned. And that brings about a lot of risk, from cyber security to just people exposing the data of the organizations to these public open platforms. If then there's no drive from a leadership or organizational level that really creates a safe environment for the adoption of the AI tools. So that is in principle what we sort of like seeing. That shadow AI usage is estimated to be at a staggering 32%. So right now as we speak, 32% of people in organizations are using AI without it being sanctioned by the organization itself. And that is worrisome because the risk is really quite huge. And I think if it's not addressed soon enough, most organizations will find themselves in hot water with regulators and compliance perspective. Yep. From an economic impact perspective, I actually always say we need to think about AI less as a technology, but as an economic imperative. I think suffice to say that we are living in what I call the AI economy. So just to backtrack a bit and give sense of what is this AI thing and how did we find ourselves here. This is actually just a continuation of how the world has always tried to find more effective and efficient ways to really use information to create competitive advantage and create value for themselves. So this story basically began in the beginning of civilization itself, when we learned how to speak and started exchanging ideas and agreed on religion or business or ideas as two people or more people. And that moved into writing so that we could allow ideas to really travel from place to place, people to people, intact without losing fidelity, basically. And over time, we built libraries, we printed books, and we went into mass printing and got to a point where we said, let's digitize these records. And we started digitizing those records and so that they can be searched, indexed, and analyzed. And with the access to internet, that was made universally accessible to anyone from anywhere in the world as long as they had internet access, basically. And what we saw with that is that we started having more digital devices that then created even more data. And that's where the whole data economy and the era of the big data came about. And we created capabilities to be able to manage that data through what we generally call the cloud, which are big data centers that are able to store, process, and protect large amounts of data. But data all by itself means nothing, right, until you make meaning of it and it gives you insights on decisions. And that is where AI becomes powerful, in able to take those heaps and large amounts of data and interpret them at speed with accuracy that no human being in hundreds of years, even if we gave the best mathematician that time, will be able to do it. And that is actually what really this AI thing is all about. And people do that so that they can be able to gain competitive edge over their competitors and be able to understand the needs of their customer stakeholders, right, for whatever products and services that they sort of really provide. So if you look at what all of that means, it means that South Africa, in terms of all the previous industrial revolutions where we have always really lagged the Western economies, now we've got an opportunity because the nature of AI is that it's highly accessible. Yes, there are some challenges like the recent one that we have seen where the sovereignty debates are being intensified, and we saw the release of the latest version by Anthropic of Claude being cut from the rest of the world, and that is where we need to start asking whether we have our own version of these AI tools should the political battles intensify and we start being excluded from access to some of these tools. But if you remove all of that, it means that AI now is equalizing the playing field and is allowing everyone to really have access to these tools of innovation, and even computing itself via cloud has been made an accessible tool where you pay for it just like you pay for electricity and water, right? You pay for what you use. So the speed of innovation and ability to go to market faster is it's an all-time high, and the big entities that have big capital no longer necessarily have that competitive edge over a small player. If you've got a good idea and you understand your target market and how you can generate value, you are as good as a large corporate in being able to get that idea into action and get it out into the market and touch your potential customers. So that's a big thing. And furthermore, from a South African perspective, what I think is also quite interesting about AI as a lesson that we can also learn in terms of how your fintech, for example, innovators have really innovated in such a powerful and impactful way, is that it has enabled access to previously disadvantaged. If you look at what most of the entities have done, telecoms and banks, they've really been able to reach the previously unbanked and drive what you would call financial inclusion, right? And that is the power of these technologies when they used right, with purpose, with an intent to drive impact to those societies. Because inclusion should be one of the key determinants of whether we are innovating in a sustainable way and ensure that we don't leave anyone behind like we have seen in the previous eras. So I think we are really standing at a very critical moment where, from a leadership perspective, enterprises and the public sector, we've got an opportunity to drive inclusivity and ensure that the benefits of AI are distributed to the larger masses that were previously not part of a mainstream economic activity. And that's the biggest advantage that AI presents for us alongside its other complementary technologies that work with it. So expanding on this potential impact that we have as South Africa to do great things with AI, maybe it makes also sense to take a step back to see what makes AI work and what makes AI work sustainably and responsibly. From a simplistic way, the first three main inputs that get you to have a base AI model, if you would like, is one, data, and a lot of it. Two is the computing power, and that's why we're seeing infrastructure from a data and computing perspective being one of the really lucrative areas where most of the technology companies are delivering returns for investors and shareholders, right? Because we generating more and more data, and we need to find ways to effectively manage it for AI systems. And the last one is really the algorithms. These are the mathematical formulas, if you'd like, that are able to find patterns in that data and with the right computing, do it at speed to be able to give you the insights that you want. But if you really look at all of that and say, if then I want to build a sustainable and a responsible AI system where those three are managed efficiently, you quickly realize that obviously you need one, the strong infrastructure. Two, we need the security measures because with the large amounts of data, you also quickly find that the sources of this data come from different places, and the ability to create ecosystem that helps you generate relevant data for the use cases that you are really targeting is quite important. And those data points by default then exponentially increases your risk of cyber attacks, right? And interceptions. So that is why cybersecurity as a complementary technology is not a by the way thing. It actually is one of the foundational enablers for sustainable AI. And with that, obviously, most of this data needs to be carefully assessed to say, how did you get it? Did you have the right access, and are you observing the right privacy, data privacy regulations and rules? And that is why in our country we've got your POPIA, you've got GDPR in the Westerns, and all of those. So when you look at these critical technologies, you quickly find that AI as a technology or AI tools and applications are not an isolated technology that works by themselves. They are part of a broader technology ecosystem that needs to consider these complementary technologies that support AI and ensure that there's a good understanding architecturally from AI leaders in how they understand how the technologies work together to bring the best out of what AI can deliver for you as value. Yeah. So, I mean, as you'd know, I'm working in a healthcare organization as a technology lead and CIO there. And what is really fascinating first to understand about our dynamics from a South African perspective is that the system is under pressure. The current model really is proving not to be sustainable going into the future. So we are facing quite several headwinds. One being that we've got very few people as part of our population that enjoys a private quality health cover. And that is just over 9 million people of our population, which equates to just 14%. And the balance of the 50 plus million people in South Africa have to rely on the state. And if you really look at the amount of money that is being spent by the private sector to really take care of the 9 plus million beneficiaries, it is almost equivalent to the Department of Health's budget for healthcare altogether, which is a fraction of the country's GDP, right? So you've got this challenge where the majority now needs to be supported in much more innovative ways to ensure that we stretch the rent even much further. And if you take that dynamic specifically and say, how then do we do this? And you then need to understand where are the key challenges in our healthcare system from a social context perspective. Healthcare works in a bit of a continuum sort of manner, in that you try to start by driving wellness, where you try to keep people healthy. And when they do obviously fall ill, the idea is to try to diagnose or pick up that as early as possible before the case is much more advanced and much more expensive, in that it requires either hospitalizations or specialists and so forth. And should they also be a bit further down the line, in that maybe they have developed or have a chronic condition, one of the key things that you want to do is to also get them into a well-structured program that is designed with clinical outcomes in mind, to provide interventions and support to that person, so that you keep them controlled, if you would like, and they don't end up in hospital. Because when you understand where the biggest cost of healthcare sits, it sits at that tertiary level, which is the hospitalization level. So when you try then to bring that in and say, where can AI make the biggest difference in trying to keep the focus and the interventions upstream, where the costs are lower, before someone gets worse and have to be managed at a tertiary downstream level like hospitalization? What are the key AI solutions that can be useful for the South African economy there? Starting with the wellness, it is all about screening, because that allows you to, one, understand the risk, and also understand how you can support someone to not become a high risk as an individual. And we have seen great technologies, facial recognition being one, that are able to really, through few seconds of you looking at your phone, just like when you unlock it, we are able to gain biometrics that help us detect some of these key non-communicable or chronic conditions, such as your diabetes, hypertension, and so forth. So virtual screening, as it is referred to, is one of the critical technologies that I think will enable healthcare going forward at that early intervention or preventative level through screening. And the nice thing about a technology like that is that you've got a mobile penetration levels of over 90% as South Africa. So that's a big thing, is that majority, 9 out of 10 people do have a smartphone of some kind. And that's all you need to be able to do things like this. And even beyond the private sector kind of innovation, it is one of the areas where government can then support efforts like this to be able to really, over a short period of time, risk stratify and understand the risk at South African population level, because people have those phones and they can partake in screenings of this nature. And that is quite important, and that is where the supportive element at an infrastructure level that enables connectivity for people to be able to do things like that is quite important, and the role of public sector in enabling that infrastructure capacity for connectivity then also bridges the gap and makes solutions like that work. Further to that is that you want people who eventually, as all of us will at some point in time, no matter how well we try, be it as a result of age or other circumstances, will feel unwell, right? Be it it's a flu season or whatever could be the cause, to be able to access a provider. In South Africa, we've got a very unhealthy doctor-patient ratio. We've got one doctor for every 3,198 patients. So access to a doctor is very, very limited in South Africa. And if you are living in one of the remote areas, it's even far worse than when you are in the urban spaces where maybe there's a doctor down the road in every street. So what AI is also able to facilitate from a telehealth perspective through virtual consultations is access to doctors from anywhere by anyone. Imagine a loved one in a village, like my mom in a village in Limpopo, being able to talk to the very same doctor that I'm able to go to physically down the street via virtual consult and explain their symptoms, and they get helped or referred to a specialist should that doctor deem the situation far more complex and require that kind of intervention. And the person doesn't have to then even leave the comfort of their home to be able to have that kind of help and support. And this also speaks to the social determinants of health, we call them. That speaks to the social context of our country, because there are a lot of people that are not accessing healthcare today simply because they have to take, be it 2 or 3 taxis to get to the nearest doctor. They may not have the money for the taxi, or even just the transportation itself is irregular. So solutions like that really enhance access quite tremendously without worrying about how we increase the capacity of the number of doctors per se. While that itself should be an imperative, but this is where AI again can add quite a lot of value in understanding that. Furthermore, we are seeing great technology in the radiology space in terms of image analysis that are able to really quickly and accurately pick up early on risks of conditions like cancer mostly, and drive that intervention early enough before the conditions progress to advanced stages and become quite fatal for most people. So we're seeing quite a significant impact in terms of accuracy and ability to really interpret these results with high levels of accuracy using AI technologies and methods called neural networks. So that is quite critical even at that level. But from a data perspective, ability to collect all these things that I'm talking about, when you go to a specialist, when you go to a pathologist and your bloods are drawn, we're able to connect all these dots and be able to coordinate care for you and predict what is the next risk, what should happen, and what should be the intervention, and you get supported. So really, at all levels of your journey of healthcare, AI plays quite a significant role to ensure that we keep people healthy. We understand where the greatest risk and what kind of risks sit, and we deploy resources more efficiently and more targeted, which are limited. I spoke about the dynamics of the budget and the money that healthcare enjoys. So we need to be smart with our rent to stretch it. And AI really holds probably the single biggest opportunity in making that impact than thinking that the money will come somewhere which has proven not to exist given the limitations of our tax base in this country. As the anchor judge for the South African AI Awards, we've got quite several categories, and they've been carefully thought out and designed in such a way that they are comprehensive in nature and covering all opportunity areas that AI really offers for us as a country. But zoning into one of the areas that I'll be strongly focusing on as the anchor judge, which is the healthcare portfolio, I think what is critical to consider and what we are anticipating to see, and we've already started seeing with the nominations, is really ideas and innovations that extend beyond just the technology smarts. Like I said, AI, we should not think about it more as a technology, but think about it as an economic and social impact imperative. So with most of these submissions, what we anticipate and what we really are looking for, one is definitely the impact, to say what impact does this idea really have. Obviously, we're looking at the technical innovation around it, the novelty around the idea, but we're also looking at how can this be scaled and it could be scaled at a national, broader level, but also even within the community that maybe the idea may be targeted at. Because at the end of the day, this is all about impact and ensuring that we really target this technology in areas where it is needed the most and ensure that we've got that inclusivity and we leave no one behind. And then we understand how can this really be supported. If really someone was to be successful, and they need even say incubation, so that we try further really scale their impact beyond where they may be operating at. So those are the critical items over and above the technology and the innovation itself. It's about the impact and the scalability. So I recently launched a book about a month ago, Your AI Navigator, and really the intent behind it was really to ensure that every reader, every South African, interesting enough, one of the things that I tested before I took the book out was to even get my 10-year-old to read it and ask him if he even understand what I'm saying. And that for me was quite an important thing, because I was just not writing for the exclusive few. I was writing a book that I strongly believe that whichever sector you are in and in whichever form or shape you're participating, you don't have to be a technologist, you may be a policymaker or just someone who believes that you're going on about your life doing your normal job. You can truly understand actually what is this AI thing. I think that is the first and foremost important thing. It's very easy to get caught in a hype without even fully understanding what this thing really is. So I take the reader on a journey of what is this thing and how did we get here in terms of AI, and what it means for you, and what do you need to do to gear yourself up in what you can call it future-proofing yourself, and what are those key attributes that you need to demonstrate to be on the right side of the impact of AI and reap the rewards. Yes, there is a lot of fear about AI, and AI will cause or is already causing quite a lot of disruption. But history has always proved to us that with that, there are also opportunities. And those that have got a very, very clean understanding of the phenomena of whatever the disruption is at that point in time, they act one with calm, with clarity, and they understand where the value and the opportunity basically sit. So the intention of the book for enterprises, public sector, policymakers, individuals is to say, whoever you are and however you are participating in the mainstream economy, this is exactly what you can do to literally increase your chances of finding yourself on the right side of this manifestation of this greatest technology to ever disrupt us in human history.